How's it going, YouTube? It's kind of funny. It's cloudy, but it's really bright. Gonna get things opened up here, and we'll get going and do something today. Mail call. There you go. Total price, 2 wheel cylinders. Under $24. Costs more than that to ship it here. Ship them here. Here we go. So I guess that's what we're going to do today. Okay, YouTubers, here's what we have. The part we're replacing is this. It's the wheel cylinder. On the back of the wheel cylinder, you'll see there are 2 holes here that are threaded, and those are to mount this wheel cylinder to the backing plate, which is a plate that holds everything. The brake line enters here, and they keep it plugged new to keep impurities out. And you also have what's known as a bleed screw, or a bleeder. That's this one here, and that's to always set up at the highest point to allow you to get air out of the cylinders, because you don't want any air in the brake cylinders. In order to do a job like this, some people will just undo things and try and squeeze that in. But I'm doing a maintenance service here, so I'm going to take the brakes apart and actually lubricate the spots that are supposed to be lubricated, and it'll give me a chance to check things over. It'll also make changing the wheel cylinder a lot easier. Okay, there's the wheel cylinder there. So you can see up here is the bleeder. Here's the line, and there's the 2 bolts that hold it on. One of the concerns with taking this off is this line here quite often will stick inside this fitting. So when you try to loosen this off, it will possibly twist this line, which can create problems because you might have to end up replacing that line, and that's a lot more work again. So you really want to make sure to get that line loose without having it stick to the fitting. In order to remove the brakes, to service them and change that wheel cylinder, I have a number of tools that I'll be using. I'm going to show you what I'm using here. Okay, to apply a little bit of heat, of course I've got the liquid wrench. Got some fluid to clean the brakes. Also got some penetrating fluid. And then, not that I should need it for this, but I do keep my BFH, or big effing hammer, handy. And then there are a number of brake tools that are available. These tools here, this tool actually has 3 different functions. One, it can pull springs with this end on some brake systems where you have to grab on and have a way to pull the spring. So you could attach it to a spring and then pull up against the brake lining. On the other end of this tool is this little cup and this little hook. The cup is used to get these springs off of here. There's a fair amount of tension on them, and that's used there. On the other hand, to put them back on, you use this like a lever. You'll put the spring on it, hook it on there, and be able to have the spring slide into place. So that tool has basically 3 functions. This is a really old one that I've had for a long time. This one only has 2 functions, although it's the same kind of tool. It has the one for the springs, and it has the one to replace the springs. But in a case like that, I have a couple of different tools. One that has the removal on one end and the installation on the other end. Once again, that just slips over. And again, that hooks on. And then I have another one. And it's got both ends again. Another variation of that is this one. And I've had this one for many, many years. And it's never been my favorite, but it has come in handy because it doesn't take up much room in my toolbox when I was racing. So this was usually the one I took. Because if you had tools that were bent like this, or you took multiple tools, it took up a lot of room. So you just minimized what you had. Then you have a tool like this. And this is a retaining tool. That's for these springs here. And all you have to do is you put it on and you push and give a 90-degree rotation. I'll show you how that is done when we get going. In a case, if I was just going to be replacing the brakes and I was leaving the wheel cylinders alone, once I take the brake assembly off, perhaps I'm servicing the parking brake cable, which is down here and then runs in through the back there. You don't want the wheel cylinders to pop out. The pistons sometimes will pop out. I have a tool for that. It's a retaining spring that you actually, it's just like a clamp. You squeeze it to open it and you can actually put it on the two pistons and it'll retain it for you. In order to get the line loose, I have flare nut or line wrenches. These are a 6-point wrench with a notch out of them. And these are used so you get the maximum bite around the fitting. Here we have the socket and ratchet to take the wheel cylinder off, small wire brush to clean up the line, and then when we're all done, we're going to have adjusting to do, and I'll show you that. And I have several different configurations of adjusting tools. Also, you'll see here is vacuum plugs. When I take the brake line off, I will want to minimize how much fluid is lost, and so as soon as I take that line off, I'm going to cap it to help minimize how much brake fluid drains out. Okay, first thing I'm going to do before I do anything is I want to make sure I can get that line loose. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to want to clean off as much debris as I can on that fitting and on the line, just to help make it easier to get it off. And the mounting bolts, just clean around them a little bit as well. If I was just going to be bleeding the brakes, I would work around the bleed screw to make sure it was clean and break it loose. The next thing I want to do is I want to give it a small shot of something that will allow me to take the line off a little bit easier. Okay, now that's sitting soaking. That should help me remove that line without breaking it. In the meantime, I'm going to start disassembling the front. When you're unfamiliar with brakes like this, you want to make sure that you don't lose track of where all the pieces go. Sometimes these two springs are different. When they're brand new, they'll have colored paint on them. I want to know, so this is where I'm going to be using the brake wash. As you can see, the brake cleaner works very well to make everything look nice and shiny. Although it's less common nowadays, brakes traditionally had asbestos in them. And Asbestos, as you know, can cause cancer. So you always want to make sure that you don't inhale that. Okay, the first thing I'm going to want to do is I want to remove the parking brake cable here and this spring here. Now that's a case where these pliers can come in, because I can hook this curved end here onto the spring and this one onto the shoe, and it gives me excellent leverage to pull. And you see I just very carefully pull that. You see I just carefully pull it, and I can remove these pieces. Except when your hands aren't working right, then you're kind of screwed. And there's nothing that holds these springs on except the fact that they're bent and they hook into a hole. So first I got that off, then I'll take this cable off, which loops around the anchor for one of these two springs. Next I'll be using this tool to remove these springs, and you have to make note that one is on top of the other. Make note of that, because if you try and take the back one off, it's just not going to work. In my case, the spring on the front shoe is the one in the front, so I'm going to put that over, and I rotate this in behind the spring up here, and then once I get it rotated around, I can pull the spring off. So put it on, twist it, and pull it. Simple as that. Same as this one. Put it on, twist, and pull. Now this one you'll have an additional function, because it also holds on this little bracket which directs the parking brake cable, so you have to be careful to note where that came from. Here's the other spring. Now there's also, the only things holding this on now, I'll take that cable off, is these two anchors here and here. There's a little bit of spring tension on these that's holding this star wheel adjuster. But I can pull this apart and I can take the star wheel adjuster out. So I'm going to do that. Pull it out a little bit, remove the star wheel. This is the adjuster, and right there you see that's a screw, and this end comes out, and it has in some cases it will have a small washer here. This is something that when you do the repair or a service on the brake, you want to disassemble this, clean it, and re-lubricate it. I can tell with this one it's lubricated. Sometimes you'll find these and they'll be seized and your brakes aren't adjusting. This one still turns, but it's very stiff. Next thing I'm going to take off is this little bracket here, which helps actuate the parking brake. That's a simple, again, just pull the park brake shoes out of the way, grab that, pull it off. Make note there is a spring on it, and if you look, the two ends are slightly different. This one has the taper, this one is straight cut, so you can't mistake which end the spring goes on.